Despite how strong the Admirals are in the world of One Piece, I would say that there is something that each of the 7 Warlords can do that is to a greater ability than that of the Admirals. Which makes sense because for the world government to ally themselves with these dudes, they have to be bringing something crazy to the table. So the question is, what does each Warlord bring to the table that is greater than that of an Admiral? And we'll start with Mihawk because it's really just fighting skill. World's greatest swordsman, used to be a rival to Shanks back when he had 2 arms, used to be known as the Navy Hunter. He hunted people within the Navy. They would much rather have him as a friend than foe, which is why it still boggles my mind that they sent so many people after him. Next, I'm going to bring up Jinbe, because while I wouldn't say individually he has anything greater than that of an admiral, being what is essentially the strongest fishman, and you have like the strongest fishman under you in the Sun Pirates, that is a big deal, because these guys combined can do a lot when they're working together. For example, they can hold off Big Mom, an Emperor fleet, so that the Straw Hats can get away, and they suffered 0 casualties in the process. Put Jinbe Sun Pirates in the water, and if an Emperor fleet can't really deal with them, a fleet with an Admiral can't really deal with them, they are just that imposing. And it's because most people can't really interact with the water like that. Aokiji's ice can get down there, but as we saw when Law got away from him, the ice stops at a certain depth. These guys can just keep going deeper. So if you want to have some control over the sea and you're an admiral, you better be bringing Jinbe aboard. Next up, we're going to talk about Doflamingo, and just like Jinbe, it ain't got nothing to do with power, it has what he can do outside of that power. Dofi's influence allows him to have connections to other emperors like Kaido and Big Mom, and connections to the world government themselves. Not to mention being a celestial dragon and knowing the secret of the world government. If he wants you to send an admiral his way, guess what? You sending him an admiral. What's he got to worry about fighting admirals for? He brought them as his security. So if there's anything Dofi brings over the admirals, it is control. He don't got to be a better fighter when he doing this in the background. Next, let's talk about Gecko Moria. Cause as is, definitely too weak, but when you think about what it is he can do, he's probably one of the strongest people in the series. Luffy with 100 shadows gained a plethora of abilities and a bunch of strength that allowed him to take down an ancient giant like Oars. Gecko ate 1,000 shadows and got way stronger, but since he was out of his prime and he couldn't really control it, every punch Luffy hit him with made him spit up shadows. If Gecko were to gain some control though, became like at least a little bit like how he was in the past, that Gecko will be an absolute menace. Not to mention with his shadows, he brings an infinite army to the battlefield that the admirals cannot replicate, that the world government cannot replicate. Adding Gecko Moria to your forces gives you a dude that can potentially be one of the strongest people out there, but it also bolsters your numbers by almost infinity. Next, let's talk about Bartholomew Kuma. Big imposing dude that has deep connections because of his ties to the Revolutionary Army. But more than that, I would say physically, he is stronger than every admiral, and that's not crazy. At least when you consider this thing I'm about to tell you, which is a spoiler, so 3, 2, Kuma's a buccaneer, so he's mixed with giant DNA. Just in a smaller body. So this smaller body is outputting strength that is very similar to that of a giant. Now, we've seen top tiers have more strength than giants. Being a giant is not the end-all be-all in terms of power. But when you see the punishment that this man can take from a Kainu of all people and keep it trucking, just to send himself off to go fight and deal with Saturn, and he can put the paws on that man too. Immortality and all. It makes me think at least that no admiral wants to get punched by this dude. Which checks out because usually you don't want to get hit by the gentle giants because they usually hit harder than everybody else. Next is Crocodile, but I ain't got to spend too much time on him because I think y'all already know the deal. Being a Logia, just like the admirals, means that eventually when awakenings start going around, that dude is going to be able to do similar things that these 3 characters can do. That's terrifying. On top of that though, I would say that Crocodile is smarter than any of the admirals are. The reason why his bounty is almost 2 billion is because of not just his Logia, but because he's very intelligent. Look at him. This dude on his own got out of prison, created an emperor organization that has one of the strongest people in the world now working for him. And he's putting bounties out on Marines, including these admirals. The things that his mind can come up with is something that the world government will always have to be on their toes about. And last but definitely not least, Boa Hancock. Because if I'm being honest, out of all the warlords, she is the closest to being an emperor herself. She has her own territory with Amazon Lily, 2 essentially commanders that both have observation and armament hockey. Keep in mind, most warlords' top attendants do not know hockey at all. And then every single one of her foot soldiers knows bare minimum armament hockey, and they put them in their arrows when they launch them at you. So it doesn't matter who you are, including admirals. If you see them arrows coming your way, you need to dodge, because they will actually put you in the dirt if you get hit by too many. On top of that, Boa herself has all 3 forms of hockey and a devil fruit that is one of the most deadly devil fruits in the existence of One Piece. If she turns you to stone, you're effectively dead unless she wants you to turn back to normal. Even when other emperors like Blackbeard invade her territory while she's already getting invaded by the Marines, he has to let his people know, hey, we have to hurry and find Boa before she finds us, because if she sees us before we see her, we are all dead, including me, the emperor. He had to enter her territory walking on eggshells, and he had to snake her while she was dealing with Kobe. If even Emperors of the Sea don't really want smoke with Boa, you can see why these guys would rather have her on their side instead of having to fight her. So just like that, each of these warlords has something in their back pocket that is greater than that of the admirals and something that the world government desperately needs. Crocodile's intelligence and Logia abilities, the raw physical might of a buccaneer, an infinite army from the Shadow Colossus himself, underworld dealings with emperors that even the admirals can't really interact with, control over the strongest pirate crew in the ocean that can actively fight off Yonko fleets, and a swordsman that can put anybody on the other end of his blade to shame. There's a reason why with the 7 of these people combined, they were one of the 3 great powers of the world, with the other 2 being the world government and the 4 emperors.